And welcome back. And last week's video we went through the study about the false doctrines about hell, because when we start and to initially look about the second concept recorded in the Jude book, we can understand after the Israelites and how they fall. We understand from the second Peter book, the fourth chapter, we can see in the 5th verse, we saw clearly recorded that the fallen angels had been sent to hell. There we understood the original Greek word used for this is meaning Tartaru, which means imprisoned. Then we also went through the false doctrine of hell. The word among the Christian denomination is a place of fire and torture, the sinners after their death. We understand. Hell, and we understood hell, though, is not a place of torment, but a condition of unconsciousness after the death state. And we understand it was for those to be tortured in place of fire after committing sins after their death. We understood. The truth, though, is the truth is the wage of the sin is death. We understand in Romans 6 chapter 23rd verse. The translation work to English happened during the period of the Dark Ages. We understood after the Constantinople and the Roman Empire had turned into Christianity. Many lies were fabricated into the truth through Satan's plan. This already explained in Daniel prophecy in the 1260 days, which is the 1260 years the adversary spoiled the truth and hurt the true Christians. Also, we saw how the original Hebrew word is Sheol, describes the state of their death. Also, when it is translated for righteous people, it is translated as grave, but the same word is translated to hell in the English for the unrighteous people, which is a very interesting point, and to insist a lie against the truth. For example, we can read Psalms 9th chapter 7th verse right now, so we can get the chapter. So it says in Psalms 9th chapter 17th verse, it says, "The wicked shall return to Sheol, all the nations that forget God." So you can clearly see in my verse, it says, "The wicked shall return to Sheol, all the nations that forgot God." But in other versions, we can actually see that what it actually says is, "The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forgot God." And we can read that is in the KJV version. The version I was reading right now was the ESV. But the version which introduces the word hell is in the KJV version, which is translated the Hebrew word into Sheol, which is very interesting. And we can clearly see the Bible says there is no work, nor device, no knowledge, no wisdom in the grave. We understand. In death there is no remembrance of thee, of course. In the grave, who shall give thee thanks? And the grave, of course, cannot praise thee. Death cannot celebrate thee as well. We understand. That's a very common quote. The Bible says this, that of course death is no remembrance of thee, that we shall give thanks, thee thanks, of course. The grave cannot praise thee, and death cannot celebrate thee, of course. And we understand these things can come in various verses, like Ecclesiastes 9th chapter 10th verse, Psalm 6 chapter 5th verse, Isaiah 38th chapter 18th verse. We understand all, and we can clearly see that one point there is all in Adam will go to death state, which is Sheol, the grave, due to the consequence of sin. Not any place explained in the Bible to add suffering or torture forever. We understand. Okay, so we'll finish here for now, and as we can see how it's recorded in the New Testament next week, and written in Greek, and how it's translated to English. So let's first do a recap of what we have learned today. So first, of course, the clear points we understood was from how that due to the time in the Romans 6 chapter, which explains the period of Dark Age, in the 23rd verse, we understood about how Constantinople had changed the period of the Christians' real truth, and the Christianity's many lies had been fabricated into the truth once they turned into Christianity. And like Daniel explained in the prophecy, the 1260 days, which is the 1260 years, the Satan had spoiled the truth and hurt the true Christians. We also saw, remember, about the Hebrew point. As a recap, we saw the Hebrew last week. We saw how the Hebrew word Sheol describes the state of their death. When it's translated for righteous people, we saw the main point, it was grave, but when it's translated for unrighteous, it's hell. And we saw an example for this in Psalms 9th chapter 17th verse. For the unrighteous people, it is translated as hell. We understand here. And we understand this here. And we can read in the KJV version, the word hell is translated to word, of course. But we understand the Bible says there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, of course. In death there is no remembrance of thee in the grave. Who shall give thee thanks? The grave cannot praise thee. Death cannot celebrate thee. They're recorded in many verses, like I said before, about this point. And we understand all in Adam will go into a death state, which is Sheol. Sheol, the grave. We understand grave due to the consequence of sin. Not any place though is explained in the Bible. In the Bible, to add suffering or torturing forever. So that's all for today. So today we've really basically tried to understand the point of hell, how it's used in the Bible. When it comes to unrighteous people, it's used is hell in the English Bible, while the word Sheol, when it comes to righteous people, it is used as basically grave for the righteous people. We understand this difference between mistranslations and lies against the truth, which is Satan has done to change the way of the Bible and the truth of the Bible. So next week we're going to see how it's in the New Testament. So see you then. Bye.